Your mic's better than mine. I left mine off. I decided against it. So my talk might be a little quick because whenever I get excited about stuff, I tend to accelerate. So hopefully we'll make up some time for James because I know he's just dying to do this, really. I don't have as many slides. Years ago, I learned a presentation technique, which basically means people can't tune out to what you're doing and read all your slides and then disappear. So all my slides, more or less, are just visual prompts for what I have to talk about. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm a bit of a geek. There's a lot of movie references in there. So it'd be interesting to see how many references people get. And there's one that is a complete trick. I'll anticipate a trick in here. So my talk is Your Why is Broken. And we're kind of covering two things. We're going to talk about the paid advertising side of things, but we're also going to talk about a general approach to how some businesses operate and why some businesses operate, and how we can hopefully turn that around and bring it back to where it needs to be. So, why me? Well, I'm an e-commerce digital marketing consultant. I've been working in e-commerce since about 2013, and I've been doing digital marketing since 2010. I spent 5.5 years in-house at one of Northern Ireland's biggest e-commerce companies before being headhunted into agency life. And after years in agency life, I kind of got fed up with how other people were doing things because I worked for a lot of people who they specialized in Facebook ads. So they sold you Facebook ads, even if what you needed was PPC or LinkedIn or something like that there. Because what I was facing was people were coming on board, being sold Facebook ads, and I would look at the client and what they were doing. I was like, they're going to be gone in 2 months. And that's no way to run a business, in my opinion. You can run a business that way, but it's maybe not the best way of doing things. So I set up Vend Digital in 2022 after getting fed up with stuff like that there. I didn't have any savings saved up. I had got sick of my last job. I had a few people being like, oh, can you do this for us? And I was like, let's see how this runs. My original plan was to start, I conceived Vend Digital in 2020 with the plan to launch this year. And this will be my third year in business. So things are going okay. So who knows this guy? Yep. Most of the hands I expect to see coming up. So Seth Godin is one of the most popular marketers in the world. Wrote a lot of books, done a lot of speaking. If anyone has not had the opportunity to go to the big marketing meetup in November, organised by Trina Clark, if you're interested in marketing, do it. Seth has been there virtually twice now, and it's been fantastic. Now, I'm going to say his 20 books, the one I picked was the book about marketing planning, and one of the chapters is called People Like Us Do Things Like This. The principle behind this chapter is that to sell to your audience, you sell to people who do things like you do it. Tricia, for example, I know you started your company because you love coffee, but when it comes to later in the day, you don't want to start drinking coffee and get those late night jitters and not be able to sleep that night. So people like you who have that same issue are your target problem, your target people. The problem we face is, as an industry in marketing and how some people run their businesses, we've come into a problem in that some people do things purely because they've seen other people do it too. Billy down the road does 2 TikTok videos a week, so I'm going to do 2 TikTok videos a week. Might not apply. And that's because I've seen businesses fail because of this. They do it, so we should do it too. Someone everywhere. Almost every meeting I've been in, someone has been like, oh, I've seen someone do that, so we should do it too. And as I said, it's led to financial ruin in some cases. Star Wars, big Star Wars fan, I promise this is the only Star Wars slide that I can remember. So we talk about starting with our why. So who knows this guy? Yep, more of you guys. So in his most famous talk, Simon Sinek explains the difference between how Dell sells computers and how Apple sells computers. With Dell, they sell you a load of statistics and a load of boring stuff, and no one really cares. Whereas Apple talk about how you can edit videos, Matt, how you can produce music, how you can do the things you love. And for the people who love those things, you buy those products. Most people who work in the digital world, I would imagine, James, are Mac people. Hands up who works in marketing who isn't a Mac fan. I said who works in the marketing world though. I did expect you to follow. That said, I do come from a video production background, so that's what got me started in this path. So if we think about what drives us in our business, we can start to feed that into how things works. So in my time in-house, I was lucky enough to be down in Dublin twice. Once was for training with Facebook, back when it was still Facebook, and once was Google, who are never changing because no one calls them Alphabet, even though we can still. Does anyone remember the fact that they're actually Alphabet in the background now? .xyz. No. Exactly. So one of the things that Google said during their 2 days of presentations was when they first moved into the Dublin offices, they had a meeting with Guinness. And Guinness told them that one of the ideologies behind everything they do is they take into consideration what they want to do, what other people want to do. Going back to the thing about copying other people, if you're aiming to copy your competitor in the race to winning, they're going to get the gold medal and you're going to get the silver. You think about if you're doing bodybuilding, you copy another bodybuilder's plan, they've already started working out before you do, and the same plan you're on, they're ahead of the game, and if you're just copying them, you're not going to get that. So you're aiming for silver medal if you're just aiming to copy people. So this will hopefully work. There's 2 examples here of what I consider really good ads. This is a real throwback. Hopefully we'll have volume. Oh no. Matt, technical support. Why is this not working?
You can change the extent to replicate the.
I've opened in a completely different window. Hands up and you know that what that's about. So Preston's My Paris by Clarks. Clarks did a series of videos back around, I want to say 2000, where they took towns from across the UK and presented them as different fashion places throughout the world. So New York, different places like this. So Preston, for some reason, I went to university in Preston, which is why I picked this one. But the way it's all filmed, it presents as something different and surprises you at the end. Because one of the things Facebook said in their training is the aim to delight, as Matt said, to entertain. Who knows this one? More specifically, the vegan sausage roll. Who knows what they did whenever they were planning this campaign? Yeah, nope, go back. Does this also go on to another? Yep. Okay. Now who knows who the...
Hi guys, still a lady here.
No one cares.
Right, so today we're going to be making
No, we're not.
some sausage rolls.
That's the problem, use someone else's laptop to do these things. So now who knows where their inspiration came from? Apple. So what Greggs could have done is they could have looked at everyone else in the market who did sausage rolls or did vegan products. They could have copied corn. They could have copied any number of vegan people. And they looked outside their industry for inspiration, and they took inspiration from Apple, from the online advertising to the in-store promos. It was all based off Apple's things. And I think it was one of the most successful launches Greggs has had for a product. I did find myself trying one, not necessarily by choice. Shortly after the launch, I was working in Belfast. I was traveling home. I hadn't ate all day, went into Temple Patrick Station, into the Greggs there, and was like, out of sausage roll, please. Been craving all day, don't know why. They're like, we only have the vegan ones left. I was like, you know what? I've been craving a sausage roll that badly. I'm going to try it because the marketing for it's been that good. And you know what? It didn't taste bad. So, okay. No. My entire presentation has disappeared. That's nice. Trying to get away from all Matt's secret stuff that he doesn't want anyone to see. So, the question we ask ourselves now is, why do we care about any of this? And the answer is how we relate it all to our advertising. So, a few months ago, much to the chagrin of anyone that runs Facebook ads, Facebook decided to completely rewrite how the algorithm and how the ads relate to your audience. In principle, this sounds amazing. What they did sounds great, but I just don't think it's fully got there. So the example Facebook gave years ago and how it's worked for many years, and Matt kind of touched on something similar to this, was if you were on Facebook and your friend was away skiing in Bulgaria and you liked their photo, they knew your friend was in Bulgaria, they knew he was skiing. They were like, okay, you now potentially want to go skiing, you might want to go to Bulgaria, you might want to go skiing in Bulgaria. And you like that friend's content. So we're going to serve you more of that friend's content, we're going to serve you ads about skiing, we're going to serve you ads about holidays and all the rest of it. And it did kind of work. We got there, we got some great results. The problem is, the new one is supposed to be smarter. The new one knows that if you've actually went out and bought a trip to go ski in Bulgaria, you know what? While you're there, you might need snowboarding lessons or skiing lessons. You might need sunglasses for the mountain. You might need jackets. You might need travel insurance, for example. So it works in a matrix, whereas before it was very, you did this, so you might like this. It thinks about what you've done and thinks about the degrees of separation of what you might need. So that's where we have to replan things, and that's where the content strategy comes in, because the way this works now is it puts value on the content. So it looks at the content you're producing and tries to match it to your audience. So if you wondered why Matt was up first, it's because content matters more than ever. This is content has been important for years, but it's never more important than it is now. Who gets this reference? No one? John, thank you. So this is Field of Dreams, and the famous line for this movie is build it and they will come. If you build your content, if you build your strategy right in your ads, if you layer things up, you bring people into awareness of your business through the strategies Matt's talked about before with your content, because the best ads at the minute are ads that don't look like ads. Ads that look like good content are what serves your audience best. So you make people aware, you get people excited about your product, and then you build your funnel up to lead that towards sales through your middle of the funnel, like your promotions and your remarketing campaigns and stuff like that there. So if you have your content right and you build your funnel with the new algorithm matrix in mind, build your funnel and your people will come. Hands up who thinks that I'm going to say anticipation here. This is the trick slide. Rocky Horror Show fans? Yep. So this one isn't anticipation. This one is experimentation. The algorithm, while they've just had a major update, is always making small tweaks to it. They're always doing small little things. A few years ago, when TikTok really hit the market, Instagram replied with Reels. Whenever Reels come out, they massively oversaturated Instagram with Reels, and people hate it. If you were experimenting with video ads at the time, chances are you rode a very good wave for about 2 weeks before Adam Missouri came out and killed how much that they'd put into Reels. If you weren't experimenting at that time with video ads, you probably had figures drop off a cliff because your content wasn't being served. So even whenever things are going well and you think things are going right, you should always be experimenting. The thrown around figure for experimentation is 10% of your ad budget should just be into experimenting with new creative, new targeting, things like that there. So we're going to take this and we're going to apply the people like us do things like this. So with your content, you target the people who are coffee drinkers who don't want a coffee later in the day. You target people who are not only interested in leather handbags, but potentially in ones that are environmentally, I know you do a lot of work trying to make everything as nice as possible, make it stuff like that. B Corporation yet? Yep, so B Corporation leather handbags. So stuff like that, because people who care about those things will be interested in your content if you make the content for those people. People like us do things like this. So my question today to all you is, who is going to go for gold rather than aim for that silver medal? Hands up. Who's going for gold? Some over here? Too far. There's more chocolate for everyone there. So the thing to get out today is lead with your why, find the people who do things like you do, build your algorithm around it, and go for gold. Don't aim for that silver medal. Questions? I never know if it's a good thing or a bad thing when there's a silence, because it's either stunned silence or oh dear Lord.
I have some technical questions
Okay.
about Facebook Meta, because this new update with AI, what would you suggest? Would you suggest we use the AI and nowadays available there, or would we just keep it what we're doing? Because I feel that it's very confused now. It's basically changing the whole thing that you do for the ads, you know, like even the captions, and you just get like, what do I do? You know what I mean?
Experiment.
Okay.
So there's two problems with the AI thing, and this goes back to what I said about the algorithm and experimentation. Meta are putting a lot into their AI stuff. If you're using their AI tools, they will push your content. But when you work with brands like I do, who are very precious about their brand and about presenting things in a very particular way, there is a strong chance that AI is not going to present your product as you want it to. So there's two arguments in any piece of advertising, whether it's a performance piece or whether it is a brand piece. If it's a brand piece, or if you're very particular about your brand, experiment with AI, see the audience reaction, but be aware that your brand may not be presented in the way you want. Any more questions?
John, when you said 10% of ad budget being experimental, can you elaborate a wee bit on that? What type of experimentation you mean there?
So I would expect whatever you're doing in your main ads, do something different. So test new ad formats, test potentially new hooks, to go back to what Matt said, test new creative style. So for example, if you are seeing great success with 2 to 3 different creative styles and you've seen something else trending, for example, on TikTok, on Reels, something like that there, throw that into the mix and see how it works. Because not every audience is the exact same. So there's a chance your audience will love that content. There's a chance your audience will hate it. The only way to find out is to experiment and find out. Like I say, 10%, it's not, if things don't go to plan, you've not put a lot of budget into it. If things go well, you shift that into your main campaigns to see how it performs against everything else.
And how long would you experiment for? Like, how long would you let it run before you see the result?
Meta recommends leaving at least 50 conversions within 14 days. Whatever you're optimizing for is what they say it takes for it to fully latch on. So you're wanting to leave it for at least that amount of time since your last edit to it. So I would say as long as you can, but also, if you can tell it's not working, kill it.
I think one thing on that as well is a lot of, if you look into your Google Analytics data, you'll see the length of time that it takes for someone to actually convert from the first visit. And often ad platforms learning conversion cycles. So you need to leave a number of conversion cycles from the last change to see that.
The only add-on to that is that we know that, but sometimes it's difficult to the client to explain there's 2 weeks of testing here, and now you're just wanting.
Yeah, but I think fundamentally it's taking them through that. Literally, I literally screen share and go, this is how long it takes a customer to convert.
Yeah.
So we're not touching it. You almost need to put the foot down and say no.
No, what
Yeah,
is it?
exactly, because it actually ends up in worse results in the end if you don't.
Matt?
So what would be your, summarize one big action people can take from today if they were to leave here and have a nice weekend and then come back in on Monday and do one thing? What would it be?
Based on the 2 presentations so far, it'd be go out and make better content or better content for their audience. Based on the people, got to do things like this, put it into your campaigns, plan it, and give it time to thing, and then start planning the next piece of content and put it into your experimentation. Yeah.
This might be quite a difficult question to answer, and I understand because there are so many variables, and it all depends on the product, but it's specifically around ad budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as a business, who had obviously took on board the information from the earlier presentation and they're now generating good organic content,
Yep.
and they now want to experiment a little bit with paid.
Mm-hmm.
What does a fair ad budget look like in your?
I always say to people to spend whatever you're comfortable spending because that's different from any other audience. The way I always like to put it to people is, if you think about the average cost per conversion, if you give an ad 2 weeks and you're seeing that it's going to cost you a $5 for every conversion you have, and we know that you need 50 conversions within a 2-week period, you're going to need to do the maths to figure out how many it's going to take you to get that to that point. And you have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with that? Because you can, we work in multiple accounts where they don't see 50 conversions within a 2-week period. I work with some people and their cheapest product is about £350. They're not getting 50 conversions in a fortnight period, but all their ads are running at an acceptable level. So it is spending what you're comfortable with, but knowing your figure. You need to plan for what that figure needs to be for your sale to make it profitable. So for those guys, they like their cost of conversion to be less than £15 because they also sell on eBay. And that's roughly what their eBay fees are. So if we can sell via Meta for less than £15, then they're doing better than they are on eBay. And whenever I started working with them, 80% of their sales were eBay. And now eBay is maybe 5% of what they do because across multiple platforms and paid ads, we've just seen that and we've scaled based on results. And it's always about shifting that thing, it's experimentation again.
Okay, so let me frame that ever so slightly. I'll reframe it. So in order to apply an experiential budget, in order to get the data so you can measure that, what would you say that figure would be?
Well, the figure I like to, if I'm talking about an absolute starter figure for people, I always say about £1,000 a month to start with as a minimum, because just for the ad spend, because realistically, like I say, these platforms, they're all based on data learning. If you don't give the platform enough data to learn, it's not going to perform for you. So I've seen people come to me and they've been like, we can spend £1 a day. And then 2 weeks later, they've made one sale and they're like, well, I thought that would do better. You've not given the platform an opportunity to learn, so how was that going to perform for you?
And in order to get a good snapshot of that, how long would you need to run that for in order to gain the data? Would it be a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month?
We always recommend a 3-month minimum because it's one of those things, as we said, it's a 14-day cycle for stuff to work out. If it doesn't work out in its first track out, which is likely, you have to go a second time. If that doesn't work, you go a third time. If you stop at the first hurdle, you're never going to get to the point where you're actually getting the conversions you need.
Question.
Mhm.
So, thinking about that, if I have a campaign that the budget monthly is 1,500,
Mhm.
and the client doesn't want to pass off this budget, but they want results, what if you would you suggest them split the budget in 500 for every month, but see how it goes, because you're talking about the campaigns will be getting better after 3 months, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
What I would normally try and do in that case is find a place that's comfortable working at. By the time you've been through that, you'll know roughly at that point what your cost per conversion is. So you'll know based on that £500 budget, they will be able to, in theory, get X amount of conversions. Like, oh, we wanted to do like 20% more than that. Well, then you can do the math and say, well, actually, if we spend an extra £300 this month, we should hit that figure. Because now we're working with in theory, a mathematical equation, because none of this works out. If anyone's run Facebook ads, it never works exactly the way that is. But you have a logic there that you can apply. You know, it's costing us £5 a sale. We spent £500. If we spent £800, we're going to get X more sales. And then the argument you can make is because you're going to get those extra sales for your extra budget, your cost per conversion should come down, which means you should get more sales. And then next month, then we'll add more money, and that'll get the cost conversions come down. In theory.
And if you were presented that as a client with the £1,500 budget, would you, in your expertise, would you run that at £500 a month for 3 months, or put all the 1,500 into 1 month?
I would potentially split it because, as I said, because these are data platforms, if you give it £500 a month, you are working with £500 a month versus all your competitors. Whereas if you did go whole hog in that 1,500, you have a chance to get to those figures much faster. You have a chance to bully people. Like there was a tactic at one point called the bully technique, where it was you guessed what your competitor's target budget was, and you 10 times it for a short period of time, because then their ads would never be shown because you'd be outperforming them all. It doesn't work in the long run, but if you spend too little money, you're not going to get the results. If you spend too much money, you know, and you blow all your budget in one go, you're kind of snookered a bit. If you stage it where I would call, if you're going to do it that way, you do a data loading process for about 2 weeks, and then you scale it down based on how much budget you've left and how long you want the campaign to run.
But should have the opportunity to upsell, I suppose.
Yeah.
Month 1, 2, month 3, depending on the results.
Yeah. Emma?
For an audience that's very professional and very technical, or I don't know, like CEOs or CIOs, and trying to sell 3D scanning to them, let's say.
Yeah.
They don't stay that much, to be honest, on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Especially for professional things. How to target them, and how to approach them, not feeling very, enforcing them to sell something to them, but at the same time being open and transparent and trying to trick them, because it's always about trust and transparency in this field. Like how to approach those specific CIO, CTO who are going to buy those. Those are like services.
Probably LinkedIn. Like one of the things, be with your customers, is like what I said about the start about working in agencies that were trying to sell Facebook ads to people who needed PPC. Be where your audience are, but always be aware that you are not your customer. You need to know where your customer is. I had one client I was working with, and in their industry, email marketing was very, very powerful. And I suggested to them, they're like, I don't like getting email marketing, so we're not going to do that. Other people in your industry are making thousands and potentially millions, depending who you're talking about, doing email marketing. If you don't want to do it because you don't like it, then that's money you're leaving on the table.
Because you opened that Pandora box, from your experience, how you're saying email marketing today, 2025, compare with LinkedIn or something more professional?
Well, email marketing only works if you have the people, so you could potentially use LinkedIn for gathering the leads and then email marketing to nurture. But I am over time, and I know James is dying to get up here. So I'm just going to say thank you very much, and welcome James to the stage.
Folks, conscious that everybody's also been sitting for about an hour, so if anybody wants to take a quick comfort break for a few minutes, or there's also additional donuts. Betsy,
Teas and coffees.
Take a donut, take some sugar. We can't take all the donuts in with us, so we will just leave them.
Yes, we can.
So feel free to kind of jump around.
Who didn't get a chocolate coin?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to get a coin in your chest hair. Thank you. My chest hair was...
It's wild these days.
Fair play.
It's like, it's a big forest there. So how do I move that to the screen again?